Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com, where you'll find the audio-only live stream, links to the podcast, links to our social media sites where we simulcast the radio show every morning on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, and of all the other information about the show. And, of course, live around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Hello. How you doing? Are you ready for are you ready for this beautiful hump day? This hump day time? I'm ready. I'm ready to do it. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait. I can't wait. We got a lot of stuff to cover here this morning. Coming up on the program today is one of our guests in hour two. Well, our only guest for today, I guess I should say, is going to be, excuse me, Jared Goecker, who is running for the state Senate in District L. That is the seat currently held by Kelly Merrick out in Eagle River. And there's been a lot of stuff that's gone on, And we're going to be covering a lot of that in hour one, some of the changes and some of the close races that are going on around the state. But then we're going to talk with Jared in hour two and get his take on where he thinks the state should be going, what's it going to look like, how's it going to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm looking forward to it. This should be a fun discussion today. Of course, lots of stuff happening out there in the various races, and I can't wait to do some analysis and to talk about some of the different things that are going on around the state of Alaska and some of the crazy stuff that's going on in this race, including some things that just came out in the U.S. House race that will make you scratch your head. I mean, this is what we need, where ranked choice voting has led us to put not just a felon on the ballot, and I know because people are like, well, Donald Trump's a felon too. No, this guy's actually in prison. I mean, he's actually serving time in the Hooskow. I mean, like, I don't think he could serve, even if he won, which is, there's not a real possibility, but even if he did, he can't even serve. We're going to talk about that as well in hour one, as well as some of the other stories that are up and around the state. And maybe if we have time, maybe even kind of a cool story about about the Titanic. There's a cool story out there through the Washington Post that I tripped over this morning. And if we get a chance, we'll be talking about that as well this morning. All right. So where do we get started? Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? We're going to talk about all this stuff and get things ready to rock and roll. You could participate this morning. I'm not going to open up the phone lines because I got a lot of stuff to talk about. But if you want to hang out and talk, then we can do it in the chat room, which is just over on Facebook. That's the easiest one to get to. Facebook.com/Michael Duke Show /live. That's the easy. If you want to just get to the video where we're at this morning, Facebook.com/Michael Duke Show /live. If you want to come on over there and just hang out with the rest of the folks in the chat room, and you could do the same thing on Rumble, and you could do the same thing on YouTube. Just search up the name of the show, and you'll find us there and can hang out and do all the things. What else are we going to talk? Oh, yeah, the latest and greatest from the Fairbanks school board. Because they, there hasn't been enough controversy at the Fairbanks School Board yet in the last year. That's not, that's not important. So we'll talk about that as well here this morning on the program. What do you want your candidates? What questions do you want to ask some of these candidates, and what's important to you? The Anchorage Daily News actually has a post up right now where you can ask candidates for the House and the legislature some important questions for the big election in November. They are going to be asking candidates for House and for the U.S. House and for the State House and Senate questions on the issues. Now, do I think they're going to ask a lot of the questions that we would like to have answers to? Probably not, unless you want to go over to the ADN's website and find the little post that they made here and put the question to David Hullen, Hullen, David Hullen. And there's a form there. You can use the form, and you can when you submit the form, it's at the bottom of the page there. You can ask them, a single question. Now, maybe we should decide what the question should be. Because you only get to ask one question. It's not a series of questions. It's like, well, maybe, let's see. What do you want us to ask candidates for U.S. House and the legislature? What issues are important to you this election? What do you think candidates should be talking about and addressing? Okay, so you can, it's up to 1,000 characters. So you might be able to ask, I guess, more than one question. So maybe we should be talking about what are the questions that we want to ask state legislators versus, Nick Begich and Mary Peltola. I'll be honest with you. I probably am not going to ask. I probably would not. I'm gonna fill this form out here later today, but I don't think I'm going to put any questions in there for Nick or Mary, simply because I think that race kind of speaks for itself. I don't need to ask a bunch of questions. We've had Nick on the program several times, and so I don't really need. But I think that the questions going to the state candidates are, I think that's going to be some pretty important stuff. So what should we be asking? I think first and foremost, as we have talked about with Brad, one of the big long-term issues that we should be asking about is Will, or do they support a combining of the corpus and the earnings reserve of the permanent fund, and why? I think that would be a good question to ask right off the bat. Donna has asked the question in the chat room about whether or not they are going to caucus. Is that with caucus? Will they caucus with Democrats? Well, yeah, I think that's a good one as well. Or even just the question, should they, would they join a binding caucus? Or maybe, I think, would they join a binding caucus would be a good question as well. What else should we be asking them? Do they support a fiscal plan, a long-term fiscal plan? Or what, better yet, because that's an easy out. Well, yes, of course I support. What is your long-term fiscal plan? Maybe that should be the question where they have to actually answer what it is and give us some details on it. That would not be a bad point as well. And maybe, I guess, because I hate to ask about just the PFD, because I just feel like we're going to get some kind of boilerplate answer here. Well, of course I support as fully PFD as I can possibly. I want some details. Because I think maybe 3 questions would be the maximum. Maybe 3 questions would be kind of the maximum. And if we had a bunch of people put in the same 3 questions, a bunch of folks, listening to the show, who are watching us on the internet this morning or whatever. I mean, between all the streams and the simulcast right now, I know that there's at least 30 or 40 people who are watching the show right now. If 30 or 40 people put in essentially the same question, not to mention everybody who's listening on the radio this morning, we know that the big issues this coming year are going to be education, defined benefits, probably the oil and gas thing, although that's kind of a deeper issue. I mean, I definitely think I want to know about combining the permanent fund, education. Do I want to ask about defined benefits? Do I really even want to open up the whole education thing? I definitely want to talk about the combining of the permanent fund, and I definitely would like to talk about a long-term fiscal plan. Those are 2 things that are very important to me personally. And then the third one could be the defined benefits. It could be a question about education. I don't know. Chat room's going to have to tell me what they think here this morning. But yeah, you go over to the ADN and you take a look, and the title of the story on the front page of the ADN right now at adn.com is, what would you like to ask candidates for U.S. House and the Alaska Legislature? What's important to you in the 2024 election? And it's an article by, again, David Hullen. I apologize, David. Hullen. And there's a form right at the bottom where you can fill it out and send it to them. He's the editor. He's an editor of the ADN, and he's asking for your input. And like I said, maybe we should maybe we should continue to chat about this throughout the show here this morning and see what I'm just thinking. Those fiscal plan, combining the permanent fund, and one more. I mean, and again, I kind of hated it to just be kind of a generic PFD question. I want it to be something more specific. It could be, will you join a binding caucus, or will you caucus with Democrats? Or, this is a question going to all candidates. So I don't think that caucusing with Democrats specifically, that's more of a Republican question. Maybe it is a question of, will you join a binding caucus if you're going to use the caucus question? But I'm also, I think defined benefits has the potential to be one of the biggest painful mistakes we could make for the future, not just for now, but for the future. And so we should be thinking about, let's just think about these questions as we go about here this morning. And before the end of the show, I'll have made a decision on the 3 questions that I'm going to ask. And then if you so choose, you can match those questions. And then if we get, 10, 15, 20, 30 people asking the same questions, then maybe we can make some kind of difference in there by flooding his inbox essentially with the same questions. And maybe he'll actually ask them. Maybe he'll actually ask them. Ranked choice voting, asked Rick. Should we talk about ranked choice voting? And I got to be honest with you. I think that issue, once this election's over, may be irrelevant. I really do. So, but we'll have to take a look here. We'll have to take a look. All right. We will continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Don't forget, Jared Goecker is going to be joining us an hour or two this morning. Back with more after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
You guys actually have some really good questions coming through this. Kevin McCabe said James Brooks already did that. Yeah, I know. I know James Brooks has a whole series, and it's actually really good. If you haven't gone and looked at it over at the Beacon, there's a whole series of questions that he asks a bunch of the different candidates, and then he gets each candidate from that race's position on it, it's really well done. I like that. It was really well done. Sorry, I'm a little little stuffy phlegmy this morning. But yeah, you can go over and see that at the Alaska Beacon. Let me see. Good morning. Kyle says, will they let the market, imported LNG, dictate gas supply? That's, Rick says, have you all heard the new ad about ranked choice voting no to basically voting to keep ranked choice voting? It's long, and for those that don't know, it could be very convincing. Maybe I haven't seen the new ad for ranked choice voting. I'll have to go. I thought I was up on that, but I haven't seen it yet. Brian says, have some exterior painting and I'm trying to get done. I need a bit of dry for good luck with that. It's supposed to rain like cats and dogs the next couple days. There's just supposed to be there's cats and dogs. Brian says, do you consider a former binding caucus to be illegal? That's a good question. Will you follow the statutes concerning the PFD? Says Terry. These are all great suggestions. I'm just trying to figure out if we should just whittle it down to a handful and make it all the same, right? Donna says, will you vote for an... Hello? I'm trying to get there we go. Will you vote for an increase in the BSA without significant increase in school choice options? Well, that's a good one. Did you? Brian's like, do you favor disbanding the state and returning to a protectorate status? You're killing me. Pineapple on pizza? ? That's also a good question. The answer to that is yes, actually. It's, pineapple on pizza is a thing. I love it. Let's see. KFAR runs irritating ads about ranked choice voting. They use a pleasant old man's voice to tell us all kinds of lies. Henry says, this is the test of free-thinking radio to see if any of the rest of you are even allowed to see my comments, respond by a wave or something. Pretty sad if this host is deleting it or hiding content that could save Alaska. Hit with bioweapons and on top of... No, I see them, Henry. I see them. I see your comments every day that you're on here. Like a lot of people do. Just because people don't engage with you doesn't mean that they don't see you. That's what's going on there. Sorry, I'm just ask them if they speak Russian. Ask them if they speak Russian. All right. Well, your questions have been now they're deteriorating. They're not as good as I thought they were. So there you go. All right. We are 30 seconds out right now, getting ready to rejoin. I got some other stories to come up with, but you guys let's keep thinking about it here. Before the end of the show, before the end of the hour, we should come up with the 3 questions, maybe 4. If we did 4, then we could do both the defined benefits and the education one. But we'll see. Here we go. Jumping back into it. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's go.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Ironically, it does mean what I think it means. I mean, the word dichotomy. It does, that it does. It's ironic, but there you go. All right. We're just continuing. There are some great questions coming up in the chat room this morning, because I was talking about going over there and everybody going to the ADN and asking all these questions. We do have to say that Brian wins the internet for today, asking the question, do you favor disbanding the state and returning to a protectorate status? No, because then we would have no control at all. But I mean, it is a good question, it's that's the question. I love it. All right. Well, let's take a look at some of the other stories while we think. But we're going to noodle that out and pontificate on this for a little bit. And maybe it's not 3 questions. Maybe it's 4, because it's hard to decide whether I want to ask the defined benefits question or the education question. But there's been some good questions here in the chat room that we want to talk about. All right. Well, the field is now set for the November election, and there were a bunch of last-minute departures. The deadline was, was on Monday, which was a holiday. I thought that was weird, but they got it all done. Everything's pulled in, and now they have a final candidate list over at the Division of Elections. They finally pulled it all together, and we've got 4 candidates now for the U.S. House of Representatives. Several of the other races where there were where there were questions about whether or not somebody would withdraw. They have withdrawn, making it, in a lot of cases, just a 101 2-person race. There's a couple in the MatSu where I'm just like, people, can you just not get it together? Anyway, it's good to know where are we at? Where are we at right now on a lot of these races, and where do things go? One of the most interesting things, though, that came out of this was the fact that with the dropout of Nancy Dahlstrom, who then dropped out Matthew Salisbury, who was going to I guess, slide into that space. It now means that John Wayne Howe is going to be on the top 4 vote getters of the ballot, who is the Alaska Independence Party candidate. We interviewed him here on the program. She's a great guy, and really had some interesting thoughts, and you should go back and watch that if you missed it. But it also means that there's a new candidate on the ballot, and it's Eric Hafner, who's running for the position from jail. From jail. Yeah, he's currently serving. Let's see, I'm sorry, I got to make sure I don't step in this. I want to make sure that I report this properly. He is currently serving a 20-year federal prison sentence for threatening elected officials, judges, and law enforcement. He's in New Jersey. He's he's going to have a hard time serving. Now, he probably won't serve because he received less than 0.5% of the votes in the primary. But if he did win, he would probably be deemed ineligible by the Division of Elections because they have to, by the time that they're supposed to be sworn in office, they have to move and be there. But Eric Hafner is, but this isn't, the interesting thing is that this is not the first time. He apparently makes and not just his mother ran against Don Young. This is the ADN is talking about, his mother ran against Don Young. Was there here? Hafner's mother, Carol Hafner, previously ran for Alaska's U.S. House seat in 2018 against Don Young. She also ran unsuccessfully for Wyoming's U.S. House seat in 2020. Both Eric and his mother provided campaign addresses in South Dakota when filing for offices in Alaska. So they apparently this is a family affair. This is something that they just love to do. Now, Hafner himself has got a long history of political activism. Between July of 2016 and May of 2018, while residing in the Mariana Islands, he was on the lam, essentially. Apparently, here's the thing. He apparently is in federal prison again for making serious bomb threats and murder threats, extortion, and bribery against elected officials and others. He tried to extort $350,000. Yeah. He's got a long history of political activism between 2016 and 2018. While residing in the Mariana Islands to escape the long arm of the law, he made threats to numerous individuals located in and around Monmouth County, New Jersey, and elsewhere. According to the DOJ, the victims were elected officials, judges, police, attorneys, and their families. He sought to extort $350,000 from some of his victims. He also made a false bomb threat to an elected official's office, a county courthouse, a police department, 2 law firms, and a business. Then in 2018, he ran for Congress against a representative in Oregon's 3rd congressional district. And in 2016, he sought the nomination to represent Hawaii's 2nd congressional district, where he won 44% of the vote. He called himself a Hawaiian nationalist and an advocate for marijuana and criminal law reforms. He did not live in either of those localities. He essentially was homeless in 2018, he reported then, as he was trying to evade arrest. Sorry. This is all I can think of is this is one of he is the other registered Democrat in the race. And he is obviously, I guess he's just mentally ill, I guess. I just don't know. What blew my mind, though, was that he got 44% of the vote in Hawaii when he sought the nomination about 8 years ago. He was going to run for Congress, and he got 44% of the vote, called himself a Hawaiian nationalist, whatever that means. But all the while, he was on the lam. He's on the lam. I mean, I guess he would feel right at home in Congress, ? I guess that's going to work for you. That's going to. Anyway, I mean, this didn't have anything to do with rank. I mean, the must read says Alaska's ranked choice voting system so slick it put a felon on the ballot. He was going to be on the ballot anyway. He was on the ballot when it was in ranked choice voting. So this is not, I mean, I don't see this as an RCV thing. I see this as just one of those things where people, well, I just hope that people do their homework. Let's just put it that way. I just hope that people do their homework and take a look at this. All right. So what else is coming up in the division? So anyway, Eric is going to be there. Eric Hafner, John Wayne Howe, Nick Begich, and and Mary Peltola. That's what's going to go on. Now, even though Peltola got 50% of the vote, remember that was with just 16% of the electorate, and we expect to see some real pushes, especially with that bump from the presidential the presidential bump for the presidential primary. Other races, of course, Tom McKay and Jesse Sumner, they both dropped out last week. Sumner said he wanted to spend more time with his family. McKay said he withdrew to give former GOP rep Liz Vasquez a better chance against Matt Clayman. Who else dropped out? Oh, James Squires dropped out, which I thought was interesting. He finished 3rd place in the primary for his district, which was district. I'm scrolling. Where is it? District R. That was the Mike Cronk district. And so currently there's going to be Mike Cronk, the registered Republican, Savannah Fletcher, she's undeclared. She caucuses with a Democrat, supported by Democrats. She's a Democrat. And then Burt Williams, who is the Alaska Independence Party candidate. Those are going to be the 3 in that crowded race, which started out with 6, I guess, before it was all done. But James Squires did pull out, which I thought was laudable, I guess I should say on that. I was not expecting. I thought James was going to stick with that to the end. Let's see who else dropped out that got a lot of it. Alana Greer, I think, for the House in District 6. She pulled out. Yep, Alana Greer. She withdrew, which is House District 6, which is Sarah Vance, Dawson Slaughter, and Brent Johnson. And I don't know why Dawson decided to stay in the race. I don't know. So now you have 2 Republicans and a nonpartisan in House District 6 that's still going on. And then, of course, we talked a little bit about it yesterday with House District 9. That's the one that was Laddie Shaw. That's the Hillside and Gerd 1-1. That is both Brandy Pennington and Lee Ellis have withdrawn, leaving Lucy Bauer and Kai Holland to duke it out in that race. So just some more withdrawals on that. That House District 28 race where Jesse Sumner withdrew from. Jessica Wright is still at. Why, Jessica? Why? You could have made it just between Steve Menard and Alexi Moore, and I think that would have been a fair race. Oh, what was the Senate race too with Wilson in the MatSu? That was another one. Stephen Wright. So Stephen Wright is still in the race. He and his wife, they're like perennial candidates. They both run every time. And they seem like nice enough people, but every time I interview them, they don't have any answer. They're not even like vet. They're just like, it's like pro forma. They're not even up, it seems like, a lot of times on the issues, which is unfortunate. Rob Yunt, on the other hand, seems to have had quite a good handle on things. We talked to him here a few weeks ago. And then, of course, David Wilson, the incumbent. So there's a lot of races to be watching here. And I think it's interesting to see that we finally figured a lot of this stuff out. We finally figured a lot of this stuff out with the ranked choice voting, where we can drop out on our own and do the right thing on our own. So it's I think it's a good opportunity here. We'll see where we go from here. All right, we got one more segment coming up before we're joined by Jared Goecker, who is a candidate for Senate District L. That's another one of the ones that where people pulled out of. Ken McCarty, Sharon Jackson, leaving just Kelly Merrick, Lee Hammermeister, and Jared Goecker. We'll have those discussions in hour 2, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more after this.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend. Michael Duke Show.
Okay, fine. What do we got here? I'm going back here. It's an open primary thing and ranked choice voting, says Kevin, talking about the Eric Hafner thing. If it were not for ranked choice voting, Hafner would have been primaried out as a registered D. Well, that is true. That is true. I will concede that. But obviously, it's not stopping him from entering all these races around the country. It's not just ranked choice voting. It's the fact that this guy is a loon. Oh man. Let's see. Are you out of your mind that he even made it to the ballot? No, I mean, I think it was I mean, I'm not mad about it. I just think I think it's funny. I think Hafner apparently believes that if he's elected, he will be released. His incarceration started last year. I mean, the guy's delusional, right? I mean, he's delusional. I mean, he is delusional. There's no two ways about it. Did Harold drop out? Nope. He said he wasn't going to, and he didn't. He was very clear he was not going to. He's not going to drop out. He's in it to win it, which I mean I think is interesting. I think it'll be. I don't think it'll happen. Terry says I don't think that's called pizza. Why pineapple pizza? Pineapple Canadian bacon, pineapple, and mushrooms is a delicious pizza. I've had all kinds of toppings on pizzas. Why is everybody so biased against pineapple on pizza? It's that sweet and salty, spicy goodness. It's just, you get a little spicy, capicola on there or something, or pepperoni, or it's good. A little jalapeno and pineapple. Oh man, you get the spicy and the sweet. Okay. He's from New Jersey. That explains it. Okay. Yeah, sounds like he would make a great legislator. Andy Cizek dropped out of the Senate D race. He did, because he's not showing up on the drop. Senate D. Oh, he did. Okay, I apologize. He did drop out of the Senate D race down on the peninsula. So now it's Carpenter, Bjorkman, and Tina Wegner, the Democrat. That's interesting. Bjorkman and Wegner will probably fight it out for some votes. That's an interesting thing. Savannah Fletcher running on the evil villains ticket as the undeclared. The rights will not drop out because they absolutely do not understand. No, I mean, no, they don't. And I don't know. It's their right to run for whatever they want to, but yeah, man, it's, the both of the interviews that I did last go around, I did interviews with him in 2022. And they're both painful. He knows more than she does, and but that's not by much. And she's very difficult to understand sometimes, which again is that doesn't mean that she would be ineffective legislator if she knew the issues and knew what to. It's just, I don't know. Maybe they're just doing their civic duty. I don't know. But they will definitely not drop out because they do not understand about splitting the vote. Kevin says, looking at the numbers for House organization next year in the legislature, in the absolute best case scenario for the Republicans, they'd have 24, but that would require Jerry Bynum to win, and then Bart LeBon to beat Maxine Dibbert, and then David Nelson to beat Cliff Grow. That's going to lean a little, and Stanley Wright keeping his seat, and then a Republican winning District 9 in Laddie Shaw's seat, which, again, there's some ifs in there. That's the absolute best case scenario. So we'll see what happens. The dark money is going hard and nasty with vote no on repealing ranked choice voting, and that Nick Begich is. Yes, I know. Weren't we supposed to get rid of the dark money? Wasn't that the whole thing in ranked choice voting, is we got rid of the dark money, and now they raised $4.5 million last month for
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay. Man, this generated some interesting conversations this morning. Some interesting conversations in this morning, including whether or not there should be pineapple on pizza. Apparently, that's like the big Ford Chevy debate or the 9mm versus 45 caliber debate of the new millennia is pineapple on pizza. The answer is yes. I mean, you know what? There's just nothing that I wouldn't. I've had steak pizza, chicken pizza, sausage pizza, fish pizza. I've had pizza with fish on it. Pizza is merely a device that allows you to move your favorite foods into your face. That's all it is. That's just all it is. It doesn't matter. Bananas, sure, why not? I mean, I've done fruit pizza. My wife makes a fruit pizza that is, it's like a cookie crust with some stuff and then all the fruit, and it's a pizza. It's still, It is, you know, incorrect opinion detected. Smoked salmon pizza. Yeah, I've had smoked salmon pizza. I've had sardines on pizza. I've had all kinds of stuff. I mean, pineapple's fine. Pineapple is delicious. All right. So I'm sorry. I got distracted. I'm sorry. Let's go over to what was the other story that I wanted to get to today, since we've gotten most of this. Governor Dunleavy finally came around and saw the light and has endorsed Nick Begich. He did that Monday. He did it Monday, which is, I mean, you know, but
Welcome to the party, pal.
I mean, we've been talking about this for a while, Mike. Come on, man. Nancy drops out. First thing I would have done is endorse, but you know, it's all good. It's all good. So he's now endorsed Nick Begich. Nick had already gained like 40 or 50% of the organized district committees in the state, along with a bunch of others. So now there's the full kit is now apparently behind Nick Begich. So he's all ready to go. This was an interesting article, and I haven't had a chance to really look at it. I was going to call some folks in Fairbanks before I talked about this. This came out a couple days ago. And it was, I don't know. Anyway, the Fairbanks School Board has now met. They're back but according to Suzanne Downing, they're back on the DEI bandwagon with meetings with I guess meetings that are in violation of the Opens Meetings Act at the Queer Collective in Fairbanks. The school year began in Fairbanks, and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee is in full swing. It's a standing committee of the school board, and it advises on matters related to race, sexual orientation, and other social issues. This year, this is what got my attention. This year, 2 of the 3 parent representatives on the committee are also, in a nod to nepotism, spouses of school board members. So you've got a standing committee that's advising the school board, but 2 of the 3 allowed parent representatives are spouses to school board members. How is that not a conflict? I mean, I just don't even know. Anyway, that goes on. So their first meeting was on August the 21st, and they breezed through their agenda at the school district. Then they adjourned, and several of the committee members gathered at the offices of the Queer Collective. It's a foundation-funded organization that organizes events for the community. The director of the Queer Collective is also a member of the DEI committee. And then it goes on to list all the projects that they're doing out there, pride events and gender euphoria and all this other kind of stuff. The DEI committee trip to the Queer Collective was not on the agenda, nor was it noticed on the agenda or in the meeting materials. Now, the meeting at the Queer Collective was after the official meeting adjourned. Essentially, they adjourned and then met at another location the public was not aware of. According to the witnesses, the attendees included April Scott, Kristen Shoup, Aaron Morotti, Kel Gitter, Ranum Middlestat, among others. They're all members of the DEI committee and are clearly beyond the 3 allowed by the Open Meetings Act. And this is an official committee of the elected government. It almost certainly falls under the Open Meetings Act. If the meetings had been on the agenda and properly noticed, and if the committee meeting had been recessed and reconvened back on the record, and if a record of discussions by the clerk was taken, this could have been done legitimately. One member who went to the meeting was aware of the Open Meetings Act, but thought it was all okay because the superintendent, Luke Minert, knew about the meeting after the meeting. So this is weird, man. This is just, first and foremost, Jared's having a problem. Apparently, there's a GCI outage out in Eagle River. We're going to get with Jared here in a second. But first and foremost, you've got family members of the council, the school board, who are part of the advisory board, which I just smacks of conflict of interest to me. But and then they all move over there and have another meeting after the meeting. I don't know if you remember this, but there have been several assembly members in Fairbanks who have gotten their hands slapped over the years. Some people who I really respected too, but got together and did a little too much work with a little too many people in a casual setting and violated the Open Meetings Act. I just found this to be very surprising. Regardless of whether it was the queer collective or something else, the fact that they seem immune to Open Meetings Act laws, that they are, somebody knew about it, so it must be okay. The superintendent knew about it, so it must be. That does not excuse you from state law. The only ones that can do that is, of course, the legislature. They're the only ones that can ignore state law, right? Everybody else has to abide by it. And since the DEI committee is an advisory committee to the school board, which makes the policy for the school district, what was discussed during these meetings? I'm just curious. Did they keep notes or minutes? What was actually discussed at this meeting, and where does it go from here? And does anybody else even pick this up? I don't think the News Miner is going to pick it up. The ADN's probably not going to pick it up. So it'll all be relegated to, all this right-wing trash is talking about this. It'll just be, much ado about nothing. We, just breaking the law. They're just over here breaking the law because it doesn't matter. It doesn't apply to them. And we're just whining about it. That's how I could see this playing out as we go forward. But if it's good enough for one, it's good enough for all. We were constantly being reminded about the Open Meetings Act when I was on the borough assembly, and the attorney, she was very clear. Do not do this. Do not talk to, do not pay very close attention to this. She was a real stickler for it, and which I appreciated. Apparently, the current borough attorney, not so much a stickler for that kind of stuff. I'd kind of like to know what they were talking about, wouldn't you? All right, Jared Goecker is coming up next, The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Okay. I'm looking through this stuff right now. Jared is having they're having a problem. Apparently, there's a GCI outage out in the Eagle River. He's been trying for the last hour to get something connected, but no luck on any of my devices. We'll see if he wants to do it by phone. If he doesn't, then I guess we'll put it off and we'll just open up the phone lines and we'll talk about what questions want to be answered here. So we'll see what Jared has to say here in just a second. Before we get squared away. What was discussed? Grooming, I'd imagine, says Fat Ray. I don't know. Let's see here. Let me get this connected here so that we are all squared away. Oh, hey, listen to that. Listen to that. That was all. Let me get this one right here. Right there. Let's try that right there. See if we can get Jared squared away here this morning. Come on. There we go.
Hello, this is Jared.
Good morning, Jared. How are you doing this morning?
Good, doing all right. Sorry for the technical difficulties we're having here.
Yeah, no, seems like, I mean, GCI, they do such a bang up job. Everybody is having some problems here the last few weeks. All right, so we're getting things headshot up and do a couple other things real. So if you're ready to go, I'll put you on hold and we'll be back to you here in just a hot second. Okay.
Good.
All right. Thanks. Hold the line for me there. Donuts. While we go there. Okay. Let me see. What do we got there? Okay. I'm just I got to snap there we go. Oh, I want to get to the comments here in the chat room here in just a second. But I'm stressing my computer out because I'm doing 13 things at once. All right, here we go. Let's get Jared's picture here kind of squared away. And we will put him in the guest slot for the deal here. Let me get this talking and typing, talking and maneuvering here. Here we go. All right. GOEAR. Okay. All right. Let me get this. Excuse me while I whip this out. Let me get this all figured out here for Mr. Goecker here. Mirror boink. Okay. All righty then. And look at that. Feel pretty good about that. We got that. I misspelled his name before, didn't I? I did. District L, right? Okay. I misspelled his name in the description of the video this morning. I just realized I forgot a C. Sorry, Jared. I messed it up. All right. We'll get back to that. I'll have to. Well, I can edit it right now. Well, you guys are talking amongst yourselves. I can edit it right now. CKER. I missed the C. That was my bad. My bad. All right. And done. Is that it? Did I get this one? No, but Rumble is wrong. Rumble's wrong, but it'll do what it is. I'll just save changes. Okay. All right. Let me go back to the comments real quick. Rules for thee and not for me, says Tracer, is hurting our state and nation big time. I would agree. I mean, if the rules are good for the goose, they're good for the gander. I fell asleep. When did I fall asleep? It's a conspiracy. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Donna just posted for Randy Milton Friedman's definition of tax. Thank you, Donna. Love you so much right now, man. Just loving so much. Ron said, I saw something that said the Fairbanks North Scarborough School District Board wants to place a gay porn curriculum into their sex ed classes. I suppose. Somebody with standing needs to file a complaint. Lawfare, says Brian. I mean, I would agree with that. If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander at that point, right? I mean, if they're not going to obey the law, we should use the law to discuss it with them. Volumetrically. I agree with that. All right, let's go. We're going to jump back into it. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Hour 2 is right now.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to hour 2 of the big radio show for this Wednesday edition. We just spent the last hour going over some of the changes that are happening in the races. This is going to be an exciting election season. Lots of seats, 50 seats up, plus the state house or plus the U.S. House seat as well, plus the presidential election, plus the ballot measures. It's going to be a busy election season, I guarantee it. And we're still getting a chance to talk to some of the different candidates, some that we haven't talked to. One of them is the candidate for Senate seat L, which is the seat in the Eagle River area. That's the seat currently held by Kelly Merrick. We saw a lot of selflessness in that race here coming out of the primary. Ken McCarty, he bowed out after Sharon Jackson had bowed out. And, all these people basically saying, we're not going to let ranked choice voting put, true conservatives against true conservatives. I'm not even going to say Republican because there's so many Republicans out there who don't even adhere to the party platform. We're not going to let conservatives battle it out with conservatives in a multiple way race. And so we've seen people dropping all over the place, which is, I think, I applaud that. But we haven't had a chance yet to talk to any of the other candidates in the race. Kelly Merrick has never responded to my request to come on the program. Lee Hammermeister either, but Jared Goecker did, and he joins us this morning on the program to discuss his candidacy and what's going on in the legislature and what his plans are for that. So let's get started with it. Jared Goecker joining us right now via telephone this morning because apparently GCI has pooped the bed in the Eagle River area this morning. It's not a good thing. So let's get started. Good morning, Jared. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Good. And I am pronouncing your name right? Correctly? Is that correct? Goecker? Is that?
Yes, that's
okay.
That works for me. That works just fine.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I'm just like, don't call me late for supper. That's all I ask. Just
that's
don't,
right.
Don't
that's
do
all
it.
I ask.
Do it to it. Jared, so let's talk a little bit. I mean, I guess first we should talk a little bit about you, who you are, where you came from, for folks who aren't familiar with you. Give us a little bit of your background before we get to the nitty gritty of it, so to speak.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, thank you again so much for having me. To those who don't know me, my name is Jared. I am running against Kelly Merrick. My background, my history with the state started in the early 2000s when my dad was stationed at Elmendorf. And we fell in love with the state. and we were like, this is where we want to be. And obviously the military, took us to different places in the preceding years. But immediately after college, I came back. Actually, I graduated college on Saturday, got married on Sunday, and the following Friday was on a plane with my new wife back to Alaska. So I wasted no time in coming home. And I've been up here, done a number of different things. Most important to this role is was Governor Dunleavy's labor negotiator for a number of years. So I was responsible for negotiating all of the public labor contracts statewide. Hundreds of millions of dollars on the table, and I think we did a pretty good job. I think we got some really fiscally responsible contracts.
I was just going to say, now we know who to blame, right? I mean, yeah, now.
Yeah. No. That's the other guy.
Yeah, no. That's got to be a hard job. I got to say, that's got to be a job. It's one of those things where they say, you did well when everybody walks away from the table not very, not happy or slightly unhappy or whatever the thing is. That's the art of compromise, right? When everybody walks away dissatisfied, that's the art of compromise.
That's what they say. Personally, I don't know that I buy that definition, but it was a good job though, and it really, you learn a lot about negotiating. You learn a lot about just power, honestly, power dynamics, and I think that really has situated me well. I think I'll taken a lot of the experience from that. I think would apply directly to a lot of the roles of a legislator. But and so last year, my wife and I were kind of talking about this, and we're like, we don't feel like the state's going in the right direction. We feel like we're slipping. Honestly, it feels like we're honestly in a bit of a decline, and we felt like we had something to add to the conversation. But we just had our firstborn, so we're brand new parents. We're like, you know what? Maybe this isn't our time. Maybe somebody else needs to try and take this on. And so that's kind of where we left it until the end of last year, when unfortunately my brother was murdered here in the Anchorage area, and and he was killed by a guy that a long violent criminal rap sheet, and the criminal justice system just hadn't quite caught up to deal with him yet. And that really changed our entire outlook on all of this. It lit a fire in our belly. The more we realized is, while our situation is tragic, terrible, it's not unique. And all across Alaska, there's a rise in violent crime, and there's a failure by our criminal justice system to hold people accountable and to protect victims and protect just the citizenry at large. And so that really lit the fire in our belly, and we decided, like, hey, if not us, then who? Who's going to fight harder on this issue than we are? And
right.
So that's what compelled us to jump in. And so we jumped in January, and the rest is history, as they say.
And so that was really the catalyst, because that's normally my next question is, what made you lose your mind and decide to do this? Because obviously you probably got other things that you would rather be doing rather than, be in the political arena. But that was kind of the final straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that's what put us over the edge and got us in this. And you're right. There's a lot of other things. We could be dead. I have fished exactly twice this year because we've been so busy focusing on the campaign. And because look, running against any incumbent's already going to be hard, but running against somebody like Kelly Merrick's going to be really hard. And so we threw everything we had right up front. Like, we're gonna knock on as many doors as we can. So we started knocking doors in February. And I don't know if you've had an opportunity to canvass in -10 weather. I gotta say, it's an experience. It's definitely a different experience. But we've put our shoulder into it.
Yeah, no, you should try knocking doors in Fairbanks in October. That's
fair.
It's definitely educational. Let's put it that way. You're definitely going to get some. You definitely dress warm for that. What are some of your? You said that you and your wife noticed that you felt like the state was in decline. And what were the bellwethers for you? What were you looking at? What were the indicators that to you said you think that the state is sliding down and in decline. What were the metrics that you were looking at in that?
Yeah, it's a few things. One, you look at the job market, right? You've got a lot of young people that are leaving the state because they don't see a future for themselves economically. They see issues with our education system. Our education system is unfortunately one of the worst in the country, and as far as producing people that are able to read, write, all that stuff. And so when you've got an education system that's failing, you don't have a robust, economy where people feel like there's an economic future for them here. They start looking elsewhere, and they start looking to go somewhere where they can provide for their family, where they can get a good education for their kids, where they can build the future. And unfortunately, we're seeing those trends going in the wrong direction. We see an outward trend of people leaving the state, and that's bad. It's a lot of the younger people leaving the state. There's not going to be a future for the state in 10, 15, 20 years. So those were some of the big things we're looking at. But especially here in the Anchorage area, you look at the Anchorage Assembly, for example. It seems like this city government has continued to tax to the leftward, and they're implementing new taxes, crazy new policies, and it's just there's a sense of hopelessness right now. And when I'm out talking to people, they're scared, right? And they're saying like, I don't know why I'm staying here. I don't know that I can afford to stay here. And so then when you've got that happening at the local level, and then you've got all the mess going on in Juneau at the state level, people just don't feel like that the state has their interests at heart at all. And so a lot of people are looking at leaving, and a lot of people have left, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that is the first indication that something's going wrong in areas when people start voting with their feet, because that's the easiest thing. I mean, that's the most direct thing that people can do is vote with their feet. They can get
Right.
involved, they can do politics and everything else, but many people are just like, I don't know if I'm going to affect this, so better to make that decision. And we've seen that going on. And there's been a lot of talk about, the older generation, older population is staying, but the younger new workers and things like that, they don't feel like there's a lot of opportunity here, which is problematic. I guess the question then becomes, and this is kind of a different question than what I normally ask, but is it the government's role and mandate to make sure that there is something for the younger people to do? Is that a private economy thing? Is it a public economy? Is there a combined mandate there from both of them? What's your position on that?
Yeah, like I'm a private markets kind of a guy. I think that if the private market is thriving, obviously that has all sorts of good positive impact. But while I would say that I don't know that I think the government can positively impact the private market, but it sure as heck can negatively impact it. And I think that's what we've seen over the years, right? Where we've had where we just haven't projected stability to anybody looking to start a business here in the state. We haven't projected stability that we've got this all figured out. We're talking about new taxes all the time. We're talking about all sorts of just issues that we're failing to address year after year after year, and so I think that has had a negative impact. I think that when the government isn't taking these issues seriously, when the government isn't addressing crime, when the government isn't addressing a failing education system, when the government is not projecting stability to people looking to start a business, I think that all negatively impacts private investments and private markets.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, there's the position I think the best position the government could take in a lot of these issues is just to get out of the way and let the market do what the market's going to do. That's part of the problem is that we've got so much interventionalism into the free market at so many different levels, federal, state, local, everything else, that it's just, it makes everything more difficult. Let the private market do what the private market's going to do, and let it sort itself out and get things rolling. And I think that would be a healthy start for the state of Alaska.
Agreed. 100%. Yes.
Yeah. Jared Goecker is our guest, a state Senate candidate for District L in the Eagle River area. We are up against the break, and we're going to continue here in just a second. We'll continue with Jared asking some questions, talking about some of the big issues that we've been talking about with everybody, and we'll continue that on here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with more right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right, Jared Goecker is our guest here on the program. We're going to continue with him here in a second. Jared, during the breaks, we like to change gears just a little bit so we don't repeat ourselves. Somebody had an interesting question in the chat room. Brian asks, he says, totally off topic, but how does one become a labor negotiator? Is it a college degree thing or a training thing or what?
Yeah, well, great question. A lot of people, I mean, you can take different paths to it. Mine was, a political science, communications background. And I'd worked in property management prior to joining the Dunleavy administration. So I'd had a little bit of that background going into it. So when I was in the governor's office, I was an aide to the chief of staff. And they're like, hey, look, we need somebody who's smart, competent, and loyal. And I said, well, I'm at least two of those things. And time will tell what the third one is.
Right.
And so that's how it ended up working for me. A lot of people do, specifically get a degree or maybe even law school, get a JD. But the path, that was the path for me though.
It's interesting that, again, that's got to be a thankless job, because even if you do a good job, somebody's going to hate you. It's one of those things that, it definitely is. And in fact, I was just talking with one of my regular guests, Chris Story, about one of his favorite books, which is from Herb Cohen, who is the master negotiator. And I was just ordered one of his books. I can't remember the name of it, one of his masterpiece books, because we all negotiate everything, but that definitely is some high stakes stuff when you get into the state things and things like that. Definitely makes it interesting. Yeah, anyway, we'll get into that. Tracer over on Rumble said that they too had some brush ups with the criminal justice system, lost a couple of cousins-in-laws to a murderous guy they'd hired who got off with a slap on the wrist, even though he tried hijacking their business after they died. He said Alaska desperately needs help. Do you think we still need to work on criminal justice reform here in the state? I mean, I know we did the whole SB 91 and that was a whole thing, but do we still need more criminal justice reform here in the state, you think?
No, desperately. Look, last year alone in the Anchorage area, they released up to 35 people indicted for murder or homicide with as low as a $0 bail. That is insane. Absolutely insane. So when we're just letting people go who have been indicted, and we're not talking, they've been accused, they've been indicted for one of these like heinous crimes, and they're getting, let back out on the street. And what do? When they get back out on the street, they reoffend. They reoffend immediately. And so, yeah, we've got some desperate need for some bail reform. The courts themselves need to clean up their own process too. And I know that's a little bit more complicated as a separate branch of government, but frankly, the courts have failed us, the people, with how they've handled themselves over the last few years, be that with COVID and all of that. So it desperately needs some reform.
Have you taken any look at the whole grand jury issue that's been going on? Have you been following that as well?
As far as going on with the federal judge?
The here in the state, there's the whole dust up and the fervor over the grand jury, where the courts have been shutting down the grand jury's investigation component that's in the Constitution, that it's only the grand juries have the ability to investigate and indict for state issues. And there's been a big thing
Yeah.
down on the Kenai. I don't know if you've been following that or not, but it's been interesting to watch.
Yeah, no, I haven't been following that specifically from the Kenai, but no, I mean we've got to clean it up. It's a mess across the board.
Yeah. Well, the grand jury is, again, the ultimate tool of the people to keep the government in check, and it's definitely something that we should be, we should be utilizing and protecting as far as that goes. All right. Well, that means we're about to go back into it. So let's get into the nitty gritty stuff you're probably ready to talk about. Jared Goecker is our guest, Senate candidate for District L in the Eagle River area. Folks, like and share, like and follow, subscribe, ring the bell. Wherever you're at, you can share the show wherever you are at right now. Just share it and like it. Let's get back to it. And maybe we'll get some more stuff together here. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Here we go.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Don't know what you mean. I'm a perfect angel. No problems here. Jared Goecker is our guest candidate for state Senate in District L. Let's continue on now our discussions with Jared. We've got some kind of boilerplate questions that we've been asking every candidate, Jared, because there's some specific issues that are coming up. But I'm going to start with one of my newest ones because I think it's important. Would you or do you support this concept that we're seeing now being pushed by certain members of the legislature and by the Permanent Fund Board now in their new white paper, where they're saying there's just not enough money in the earnings reserve, there's just too much uncertainty, and protect the future of the fund? What we really need to do is we need to combine the earnings reserve and the corpus of the fund and then set the draw through a constitutional amendment so we can just draw off the permanent fund itself and don't have to worry about this anymore with the earnings reserve and not having enough money for government. What's your position on that? Have you followed it, and what's your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I would say generally, anytime the government says, "Hey, let's do this thing so that we can make sure we always have money," it tends to not be a great thing. So I would say generally that's the principle. Anytime the government is growing at the expense of the people, I think that's a problem. Yeah, and look, when you got people like Kelly Merrick, who run for the legislature and say, "Oh, I'm doing this to protect the permanent fund," but then they end up taking more of the permanent fund from the people. I don't know what universe you're from, but in where I come from, where the government takes more of something from somebody, that's actually taxation. That's actually not protecting it. So I think that in the hands of the people, it's a better place for that.
No, I mean, I think I'm in agreement with that, and the fact that this is something that I've been warning about on this program for 25 years is that the ultimate end goal, it seems to be, of any legislature, whether it was the legislature of 25 years ago or the legislature of today, is to get true, raw, unfettered access to the corpus of the fund, which is constitutionally protected at the moment. But in the future, if they try to get this through, I mean, we've already seen their track record is not great, Jared. Right?
No.
Their track record is not great
not
with the money that they've gotten. They've basically consumed every available dollar and then some. I would be a little leery of giving them access to the corpus of the fund.
Yeah, look, they're gonna blow right through it, and that's in the history of the state. Every single time we get a little bit of extra revenue, we spend it, and so honestly, we really need to talk about a realistic spending cap to keep the growth of government in check. Because otherwise, the legislature is going to continue to do that. They're going to continue to play that game, and I, for one, am not, content or happy to do that. I think that we've got to rein that in at the state level for sure. Because yeah, you're right. Every single time they get a chance, they're increasing it. About a decade ago, when Walker first took a little bit of money from the PFD, that was a huge deal. And now, just this last session, they took 75% of everybody's PFD, and not that many people are, people aren't batting an eye at it. Like, well, guys, the government is taxing your PFD at 75%. That's not protecting it. That's not serving your interest at all. That means the government's getting 75% of what you should be getting 100% of.
Yeah, no, exactly. They already have their access to their 50%. Why are we, why are we now taking, getting our half eaten up? That's the bigger question. And I guess that comes over to a question that leads into things like the PFD. I mean, should we be paying a statutory PFD? Should we at least be paying a Hammond 50/50 PFD? I mean, what's your position on the permanent fund dividend? Where should it be sitting right now in your mind?
Yeah. The thing I hear from, knocking doors and talking to people all across Chugiak Eagle River is people want stability on that front, right? They just want the issue to be resolved. And so the governor's proposed the 50/50 split, put it in the Constitution. To me, I think that's a good place. I think that's a solid middle ground compromise. But in the meantime, until that happens, we need to not just be arbitrarily picking the number. And that's a lot of people's frustration, right? Is they focus on funding their special projects and their special interests, and then whatever they have left over, they go, that's the PFD this year. That's not how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be a defined set thing based off of certain criteria, and it just doesn't seem like that's been happening. So yeah, I think a 50/50 split, put it in the Constitution, follow the law in the meantime.
Yeah, no, hashtag follow the damn law. I mean, that just seems like,
right.
It seems like that it really damages the public's interest and trust in government when they don't follow their own laws, when they just arbitrarily, they have the ability to change the law. If they don't like the law, they can change the law, but instead they just ignore it, which again, to me is a very dangerous thing in any kind of government when they ignore their own law blatantly instead of changing it. If you want to change it, you've got an argument to say, at least we're following the law. We had the discussion, we had the public process, we had the debate, we had the vote. But if you just ignore the law, that's a huge problem. I mean, that creates problems down the road for all levels of government.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Look, if you feel like you're above the law, and you don't feel like there's any accountability on you individually as a legislator or as a body, that's a huge, huge problem. I 100% agree. And, when you've got these guys that are, guys and gals that are going down there running on one thing, but they get down there and they do something completely different, and they just need to be honest with themselves, and they need to be honest with us about what their intentions are, right? And look, Kelly Merrick's a huge part of the problem there, where she runs as one thing and she does something completely different down there. It's like, if this is what you actually believe, what you're actually doing, you need to be honest and say that, and just be honest about what your intentions are, so we know as voters if we should elect you again or not.
Right. Exactly. No, I 100% agree with that. Which leads us to a question of, I'm kind of jumping around here. I want to go on more to the fiscal plan, but you've just opened the door to this. One of the things was, of course, is that she immediately joined the binding caucus down there in the Senate. And of course, we've had a lot of discussions on this program. One of the charter of changes for years has been to change the rules. This whole binding caucus thing to me is so offensive that somebody would have to pledge their support for a budget that they haven't seen. Not a single line has been written. But if they want to be able to do anything, they've got to pledge their fealty to whoever the king is of the body, the House or the Senate, to be able to do it. Do you support the idea of a binding caucus? I mean, caucuses are fine, but the binding caucus where you have to pledge your vote no matter what before anything even gets started, do you believe in that, or should that be outlawed? Should that be illegal? As it is in some states, it's actually illegal and unconstitutional to have a binding caucus.
Yeah, look, I think it gets really complicated because our history with it is different, right? To me, first and foremost, when I'm elected, I represent the people of Chugiak Eagle River. First and foremost, no period. That's it. That's who I represent first and foremost. And so, if there's a budget presented to me that's adverse to the people of Chugiak Eagle River, I have an obligation as their representative to vote against it, to try and fight it. That being said, I understand there's a lot of back and forth around the binding caucus. I don't personally like the concept very much for the reasons that you've outlined. If you're sitting in a situation where you've not seen it, that's not great. At the same time, if you're in a position where you can have a Republican majority or continue with the Democrat majority that we have, but you have to have a binding caucus. I think it's worth having a conversation if it gets control of the Senate away from the Democrats, because right now the Democrats are running the table, right? And so we've got an obligation as conservatives to take that back. And so I'd be open to having a conversation about the binding caucus. Personally, not a very big fan for exactly the reasons you've described. And ultimately, at the end of the day, how I vote on a budget is going to be based more off of my duty to the people I represent. But if that's something that we can do to take control, be able to form a Republican majority, I think it's something we have to have a conversation about. We have to have on the table.
Well, it sounds like you're splitting the baby a little bit there. I mean, so you're not a fan of it, but you would consider it if it gave Republic. But I mean, again, we've seen there's a lot of Republicans in the Republican majority who have ignored other Republicans who are not. I mean, if, for example, I know Mike Shower will not join a binding caucus because he believes fundamentally that it is wrong. Does that mean that you would still join a binding caucus even if it ousts some of your fellow conservatives out there into the weeds because they believe the idea of pledging your vote before anything is? I mean, I'm trying to parse out what you said there. You're kind of walking the middle of the road on that.
Yeah, look, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if the only thing prohibiting us from forming a Republican majority, a Republican-dominated majority, or just an outright Republican majority, is whether we would agree to a binding caucus or not, I think that's something that we all have to have a realistic conversation about. Of what are we trying to accomplish? If that's the main thing, and so we don't form a Republican majority, it's because of the binding caucus. So the Democrats maintain control. That means the Democrats are calling the shots at all the committee levels, deciding what legislation gets pushed, what legislation doesn't get pushed that comes over from the House and the governor. We have to be able to have that conversation, and what other people do or don't do on it. I think that it has to be on the table. As much as I personally dislike it, I think we have to keep it on the table if that's going to be the difference between forming a Republican majority or not.
I mean, I guess my comment on that is, if the Republicans really truly want what's best for the state, they would trust their fellow colleagues to make the right decision in the end moment, right? I mean, you would trust your fellow
Agreed.
colleagues
Yeah.
to vote their conscience at the end. I would never abrogate somebody's right to vote their conscience simply because I'm trying to accumulate power. I would just say it's a caucus. You can vote however you want. We'll come together and do it. It's
Right.
frustrating. All right. I want to get into a bit on the fiscal plan. Do you have a fiscal plan for long-term fiscal plan for the state? Or do you support a plan like the fiscal policy working groups, the stuff that Ben Carpenter's been trying to do to put forward? Is there a plan? What is it? What do you see it as?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, one, I think we need to have a realistic spending cap because what we've seen, this has been a roller coaster we've been riding for decades, right? Where revenue goes up and then expenses go right up with it. And then what does revenue do? It comes back down. And then what do we do with our expenses? We're then in a situation where, okay, do we cut? Do we raid the PFD? Do we, all this stuff that they've been doing for the last, decade or so. And so it's been forcing all of Alaska and on this up and down roller coaster ride, and that projects instability, something I've mentioned previously. So we need a realistic spending cap so that when revenues are going up and we have extra money, instead of blowing through it like drunken sailors, we're putting it into a savings account. We're setting it aside so that when revenue comes back down, we can continue to fund government at a level way without having to, do taxes or, drastically cut programs or anything like that. It projects a lot more stability to the world. And to me, I think that has to be one of the first things that is done, right? Because if you don't fix this issue on the back end, you're going to be fighting. You're going to be chasing smoke, right? The entire rest of the time. Anytime you're talking about a fiscal plan or anything like that, if you don't agree that, hey, this is the absolute top that can be spent, then you're going to be constantly chasing smoke throughout the rest of that as revenues go up and down.
And any of the other parts, because I agree with you, if a constitutional spending cap, not a statutory one, but a constitutional is a must. But there are other components of that as too. You've mentioned enshrining the PFD, either the formula or the payout or something. There's been talk about new revenues. There's been talk about cuts. There's been talking about modifying oil taxes. Those are all parts of the fiscal policy working group plan. Do you support any of those other plans? Do you support the work that Ben Carpenter was doing when he was in the House on that? Would you support him if he's in the Senate doing the same thing?
Yeah, look, Ben Carpenter's a conservative, a fiscal conservative, as am I. I imagine we'd have a lot of overlap on our policy positions. I think we've got to cut. I think there are plenty of more opportunities to cut throughout, and they just don't want to do it, right? And an example that comes to mind within government, you have PCNs; those are positions, right? And you have funded positions that aren't being recruited for. Now, why would that happen? Why would you have a position that's funded that you're not even trying to recruit? It's like, well, because you're trying to, as a department, you're trying to keep a little bit of a slush fund, right? A little bit of a rainy day fund that you kind of artificially build. So one of the things right off the bat that we could do, this is just low hanging fruit, where you say, okay, if you've got a PCN that hasn't been recruited for a number of years, say 3, then we eliminate the funding for that. That alone right there, and that's something that Senator Myers proposed in this last session. I think it would have cut something like $50-some million. And none of the Democrats or Kelly Merrick were even able to vote for something as simple as that, to vote to eliminate money for positions that are unfunded,
right,
that are vacant,
right,
and aren't even being recruited for. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to trim and to cut. And I think that has to be a critical part of the discussion. I think, like you said, the 50-50 split. I think you do all of that with the spending cap. I don't think you need new revenues. I don't think you find yourself in a position where you're even having to, monkey with the tax structure. And this is one of the things I think that hurts us in the long run, right? When you have senators, like Wielechowski pushing, redoing oil taxes and stuff like that, that doesn't project stability. That doesn't say to outside investors, hey, Alaska's a place that you can come do business at.
Jared Goecker is our guest, state Senate candidate, District L. We're going to continue with him. One final segment dead ahead, The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Dukes Show.
Okay, we're in the break right now. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at something here on the screen. Jared Goecker is our guest here. We're continuing on with this. Jared, the problem, I want to dive into this whole discussion on stability and tax stability, especially when it comes to oil companies. ACES obviously was not doing us any favors at the end there, right? I mean, we were getting too much. But also SB 21 is showing that, we've even had like Brad Keithley, oil and gas consultant, who's dealt with a lot of these things for years, who said, look, there's still $400 or $500 million on the table. I'm not saying that we need to rejigger the whole thing, but we should at least revisit it. If we revisit the tax structure every 10 years, that's not a stability issue. They may frame it, people in the oil industry may frame it as a stability issue, but we have a limited resource. We have a finite limited resource, and the Constitution mandates that we get the maximum return for the people. Shouldn't we be at least open to discussing any potential changes for that in the future? Or should it just be locked in forever at the way it is for the sake of stability? Shouldn't we be able to say, look, right, markets change, things change, it did really well in the beginning, but now, we need to maybe have some minor changes to it. Nobody wants you to have 30% taken, but as we start to see this stuff trickle away, shouldn't we at least be able to readdress it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we should, but I don't think that time is right now. I think that with everything else we have going on in the state, I think that we need to hold the line, just keep things steady for a few years until we can really get stabilized, have a realistic fiscal plan, get some of our social issues, get our education issues figured out. I don't think that this is really the time for it, though. And so I'm not saying that never. I'm certainly not, absolutely not. We have to be able to respond to, like you said, changing circumstances. But that time isn't right now. And I know that's kind of, like you said, splitting the baby a little bit, but it's just the reality of the fact, as I see it, is that this isn't the right time to be messing with this. We need to project stability because the world is an unstable place right now, and we need to show that Alaska is a place that's safe to do business.
You've said several times that you believe in free markets. Kyle asked the question, does this mean you support utilities making market decisions on gas, or do you support cook inlet incentives, meaning the importation of LNG being the most affordable option now versus royalty relief or some kind of incentives? What's your position on that ball of wax right now?
Yeah, look, it gets super complicated. I think that any time where we're limiting ourselves and what some of our options might be, I think that's problematic. It's certainly, I think certainly that the utilities have a huge role to play in all of this, and it needs to be an all hands on deck type of approach.
But does that mean that you support the idea of state offering royalty relief and the state having to shoulder part of the burden for this exploration simply to make sure that we get Alaska gas? Or should we be taking the cheapest option at the moment until the rest of it becomes more economically feasible?
Yeah. Like I said earlier, I think that I don't think that the government has a role necessarily, has a proactive type role. I'm a free markets kind of a guy. So I would say definitely the latter of what you just described. Let the free market work it out. Let's not be putting our thumb on the scale and picking winners and choosers, right? Or winners and losers.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's good to hear because, again, I think part of the problem here is that we're so it seems like it's so easy. Even Republicans or conservative Republicans are out there saying, oh, well, these tax incentives or these subsidies or these relief, that's really not money, but the money has to be made up somewhere. You're going to still spend for state services. And so it may not be cash out of the coffers, but it means minus cash into the coffers, which has to be made up somewhere else. And that's the question. Should Alaskans all be paying the burden for something like that when it may be more affordable to do it a different way? I guess that's my main question here. One final big question, and this is the tough question of the day. Jason in the chat room asks, the tough question, does pineapple belong on pizza? Jared.
That is a tough question. And unfortunately, I have a very controversial answer. I think yes, it does. I think the sweetness really, pairs very well with the saltiness of the pizza. I am all for pineapple on pizza. Controversial, I know.
I know it is. It's a controversial. It's we don't touch, never touch abortion or this or that or pineapple on pizza. Those are all the big ones. All right. We're going to continue on here. Jared Goecker is our guest. We're continuing with him here in just a second. One final segment here, the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share, like and follow, ring the bell. Let's do this thing. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, one final segment here. Jared Goecker is our guest, candidate for state senate in District L. We've been talking about some of the big issues. Jared, one of the biggest issues, of course, that came across the deck last year was the discussion on education. And of course, they got an increase in the BSA, but it wasn't as big as they wanted. They were looking for basically almost 2.5 times what was happening, almost a tripling of what was going on. It's not enough. We know that it's coming back again this season, yet still we are, we've got a 1 in 4 failure rate, a 76% graduation rate. We know that the scholastic scores are in the very bottom, 48th, 49th of as far as scholastic scores. So what's the answer here? If you had been part of this process, what would your vote have been? Where would you be sitting on the question about education? Keeping in mind that we spend $2.2 billion on education plus extra spending every year on top of that. Where do we go?
Yeah, and it's a complicated issue, and obviously it gets super emotionally charged really quickly. But I think we just have to talk about the facts, right? So we're one of the better funded systems in the country, and yet we have, I believe it's the 49th overall for outcomes overall. That's a problem. that is a problem, because we can all objectively agree that's not great. And so anytime we're talking about funding increases or increasing this or BSA, all that, we have to be having a realistic conversation about the outcomes, right? What are we doing that is not working, that is producing these outcomes? Because if we continue to do the exact same thing and expect different results, that is the definition of insanity. I don't know if they teach that in schools anymore. So we need to focus on actually driving different results, right? And that can look like a lot of different things. I think that the most important thing is flexibility and choice for parents and students. I think that when we're tying people in and saying, hey, you've got to stay in this in this failing public school system, and they have no opportunity to take their students somewhere else, be that they can't afford to or transport, whatever those issues might be, it's a problem. It's a real problem, because our charter schools are actually doing pretty good. I believe I saw that they were some of the actually better performing ones in the country, which is a stark contrast to what is going on in our public schools. Well, talking to teachers, as I've been out on the campaign trail, one of the things that I continue to hear is they're not having us focus on teaching anymore. They're having us do just a lot of social justice type projects from the teacher level, and they're like, we really just need to get back to the basics. We need to get back to teaching reading, arithmetic, history, just some of the absolute just basics before we start getting into all this, all the social stuff that they're having them push at the school district level. And so I think there's a failure in strategy and strategic leadership from the school district that I think needs to be addressed first and foremost. But before we start throwing more money at it, we have to deal with the underlying causes. We have to make sure that we're going to get something different from what we're putting in.
Right, and shouldn't we be doing more with what we have right now? I mean, they've got a significant amount of money. Should we be looking at ways to save it? I mean, we've got 54 different school districts. Should we be consolidating some school districts? Should we be combining and pooling for like healthcare costs and some of these other things? And PCNs, you talked about PCNs earlier. Aren't these the ways that we should be looking at all of these things and finding efficiencies before we start throwing, or at least mandating some of this money? I mean, the BSA, they keep saying it's about the kids, but really it's more about overhead than it is about the kids. It's about, if it is about the kids, shouldn't we be focused on the reading, writing, and arithmetic, and then looking for those efficiencies like consolidating health pools, things like that?
Yeah, I think we need to have it. Yeah, and all options on the table. But the overhead, the administrative overhead, is one of the biggest problems that I see. And at the start of last session, we had a representative from ASD come to my community council, and they started it off with, "Oh my goodness, we have a teacher recruitment and retention crisis, and we can't hire anybody. Nobody wants to work for us. Oh my gosh!" And so and then they outlined all the different things they were trying to get during this next session. And then somebody asked the question, like, "Hey, if you don't get that, what are you going to do?" And "Oh, we're going to lay off the teachers." Like, wait, what? You just said that was the hardest position to recruit and fill for.
Right.
Why would you lay that position off first? It's a lack of strategic leadership. and vision. And honestly, I think it's shameful that the school district uses teachers as pawns in this game. I think that is really disgusting.
It is a pain point. I mean, what are they going to do? They're going to cut the most visible, high profile, the thing that makes the public outcry the worst. You don't give us what we want, we'll cut the things that make the public outcry the worst. We'll cut the music and the art programs, or we'll cut this or we'll cut that. We won't cut back on overhead. We won't reduce the number of janitors or counselors or consolidate things or look for duplication of effort. The first thing we'll do is we'll cut the teachers, because we know that's what you'll scream about and you'll give us what we want. And that's unfortunately been a tactic that has worked for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem there.
No, absolutely.
We're coming up to the end here. The other thing, and this is a quick one, I know defined benefits made it out of the Senate. It died in the House. There's been a big push to get first responders on it. And of course, we know then the teachers will also be on it. We know eventually every state employee will then be back on a defined benefits plan if it's approved and pushed through. Have you looked at this? Do you have any thoughts on it, especially since we still owe $7 billion to the previous defined benefits plan? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, like I don't think that projects stability. I think we've talked about that, where we have, like you said, about $7 billion in unfunded liabilities from the last time we did this. And they've changed. They did nothing different, right? They basically said, "Hey, let's do the exact same thing we did, all those years ago. Let's just do it again, and it's magically going to be different." That's not how things work. And so, if somebody can present a plan, that's fiscally responsible, that bolsters recruitment and retention, all that stuff, let's have a conversation about it. But the fact of the matter is, nobody has that plan. Nobody has that silver bullet. Everything that they're trying to do is something that's been tried before and has failed, and was catastrophically bad for us financially. Like I said, $7 billion still in unfunded liabilities. And so when we're sitting here and we're talking about, oh my gosh, the state's running out of money, we're having to take more money from the permanent fund, we're having to do this, we're having to do that, an income tax, a sales tax. Oh, and by the way, we want to start this new $9 billion pension plan. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So I think we need to have a little bit of fiscal responsibility there, and hold the line on that and say, no, this isn't fiscally responsible for us to do. And that's unfortunately something that Kelly Merrick just simply isn't willing to do.
Jared Goecker's our guest. Jared, final thoughts here. We got about 90 seconds. I'll give you your chance for your elevator pitch. How do folks find out more about you, et cetera?
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. If people want to learn more about my campaign, they can go to jaredforalaska.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Jared Goecker for State Senate. The most important thing here is that we've got to take this seat back. We've got to take back a Republican conservative majority. And that starts right here, right now, with defeating Kelly Merrick. She's empowered the Democrats. She put them in charge. They're running the committees. They're calling the shots. It's time to put an end to this. It's time to get some sanity back in Juneau. And it starts right here in Eagle River when we defeat Kelly Merrick.
Well, I mean, good luck. I'm hoping that you are successful in this. I have been concerned about, I was concerned about Merrick before she even won the race. I was like, I said, don't buy into the hype, folks. Look at who she hangs out with. That's all you needed to know at that point. All right, Jared,
right.
Hold the line for 1 second. We're going to get a final bite with you here after we get off the air. Folks, we got more coming up tomorrow. Working on some other guests. I don't have anything solid yet, but we'll see. Maybe it'll just be you and me. Maybe we'll come up with those ideas to submit to the ADN tomorrow. Maybe that's the question. All right, we got to go. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio. So, Jared, I want to give you one final bite at the apple here. And I want to start out with, if you could ask your political candidate, or your political opponent rather, one question, what would it be? And then what's your position on that? Why would you ask that question, and what's your position on it? That's where I would start, and then I'll give you the final couple minutes there for any final thoughts.
That's a really good question. There's a lot that I'd want to know. I think one of the more pressing issues, probably for Chugiak Eagle River, probably surrounds the presidential election. I'd want to know Are you planning to vote for Trump, or are you planning to vote for Harris? Because in the past, you have not voted for Trump, and this election at the presidential level is incredibly consequential for all of us, right? I mean, we've seen the last 4 years have been a disaster for us as a country on every single level. And internationally, we've got a war in Europe, we've got a war in the Middle East, and I'll be dang if we doesn't look like we're about to have a war in Southeast Asia too. We simply can't afford to keep doing things the way that the Biden-Harris administration have been doing things. And so I'd want to know what is your actual position on this, because they like I said, they've not supported Trump in the past, and so does that mean that they're not going to support him this time around again? What can we expect from her on that? And I'd want to know. I think that also the people of Chudiak Eagle River would want to know too, because they get it. They're tuned in. They understand that we can't keep doing things the way we've been doing things.
Right. All right, Jared. Well, final bite at the apple. Anything we missed or anything you want to clarify? Give you the final minute or two here to summate for the listeners and for folks who watch this later or listen to the podcast.
Yeah, look, again, really appreciate the interview. You mentioned at the top of the show, Ken McCarty and Sharon Jackson and their selflessness. I'd want to reiterate that as well and say, thank you. They got out of the race. They cleared the way for me. They endorsed me as well to set us up in the absolute best possible scenario to take this seat back. So it's me versus Kelly Merrick and a Democrat, which I realize is kind of the same thing. And so we're in a really good spot. Now it's going to be a really tough fight. We have a really long road ahead of us. The next 2 months are going to be brutal. But we saw from the primary results, this is a very winnable race. We just have to continue to execute well, because people are tired of it. People are tired of somebody who says they're a conservative, goes down to Juneau and votes with Forrest Dunbar 90% of the time. That is
right.
That's not conservative.
Right.
That's not even the most basic moderate Republican. That's Democrat. That's liberal. And that's your record, Kelly. That is your record. So this isn't me being being mean or nasty or anything. This is just your record being spoken back to you. And if you don't like it, then change your record. But you won't, because you're actually proud of it. So we've got a real opportunity here. We've got to retire her because Forrest Dunbar's values are not our values here in Chudiak Eagle River. And people get that, and people are waking up to it.
All right. Well, Jared Goecker, thank you so much for coming on board. As always, good to hear from you. And we will probably speak to you again sometime before the general election. Thanks for coming on board.
Sounds great. Appreciate you. Thanks.
Appreciate you being part of it today. All right, folks. Well, that does it for me for today. We're going to continue on tomorrow. Like I said, I don't have any guests lined up right at this minute. Was working on a couple. We'll see if they come through. And if not, then, of course, we'll be working on that. We'll be working on that list for questions for the ADN. Maybe we can get some questions in there and figure out some of these things that we want to know from our candidates. We'll be working on that tomorrow as well. All right, folks, we got to go. Be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.